It's your boy Ross B. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, share this in-house podcast. We're also available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. If you have any feedback, please be sure to drop it in the comment section.
I can't move the way I used to, had to call the audible. I put in the work, no humble flex. And talk of the town, you see who next. They on checkers, I'm on chess. Had to hit up with the X. XenHouse.
This is the XenHouse podcast. This is episode 63. Alex,
Welcome.
don't start. You got a problem?
You gotta ask dudes if
I'm
they're
about to
okay.
ask them if they're good.
I'm good. I'm healthy. Not sick.
The XenHouse podcast, we like to incorporate fitness, culture, and community and merge it with mind, body, and soul. It's your boy Des Hines.
It's your boy Alex.
What was that little wiggle?
I had to say body.
There's nothing there.
Come on.
My bad. Mike, welcome.
Can I get to
Yo,
myself?
My bad. Go ahead.
And it's your boy Ross B.
That was pretty normal.
Yeah, that was shaky.
What do you mean?
I don't know. You shaking?
What
It
did
was
I
weird.
do?
My boy said, "Hey, my credit now." All right.
Yo, I did it in multiple episodes. Now y'all talking?
I know. I just
That was extra shaky.
Pierre,
little
I need
shaky.
you to be strong, yo.
Yo! Oh my gosh.
All right. So on today's episode, we got our brother here. He's from the town. He's from the community. Although he went to a rivalry school, like we still accept him. right?
Unbelievable.
It's all right. But he's been with us here for a while now. He's in the adult classes. Good dude. I actually have his nephew and kick his butt here and there. But he's actually a sport entertainment attorney for Withers Worldwide. You know, he gives a ton of advice to young athletes, young entrepreneurs, so if you need any advice, you go to my dog. But without further ado, Mike Rueda.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Mike,
Thank you
welcome.
for coming.
Welcome,
Thank you
welcome.
for coming.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's just kind of get into it a little bit, give the people a little background about yourself, like growing up in Stanford, where you're
Sure.
from, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Cove. My parents were immigrants, and my dad was a huge soccer player. So he would still play. He was a pro back in Ecuador, and he played a lot here. There's a huge South American community, which I'm sure you're aware of. A lot of Ecuadorians and Colombians and Uruguayans and whatnot. So he would play. And as a kid, that's kind of what I did. I just followed him around and watched him play and kind of fell in love with the game. And he was my first coach. And yeah, I ended up being fairly good as a kid, right? And back then, there wasn't much of a soccer sort of like league for little kids.
Kid, right?
And my dad was part of the group that helped put it together. So he was very involved. But he was also a guy that was going to school, full-time job, probably more than one job at the time, coaching. And yeah, that's how I sort of got to know everyone I knew in town, was people that I met either like from my dad's friends when he was playing or like me playing, and kind of fell in love with the game. And that just became part of who I was. Loved growing up in Stanford because of sort of what we all know it as, right? The diversity, the opportunities, loved the schools, like all the different friends I had, no matter what background they had or what sport they played. It was just such a great place to grow up for me. And when I had a family, I knew I was coming back. When I was living in New York City for a while, but when I was moving back out of the city, I knew I was coming back here.
Yeah. It's a great town. We all came back. We all left and came back as well.
I don't think we realized that at the time.
Yeah.
Like how you realized it. I wanted to get out.
I mean, there was a part of me
Stay
that
out.
wanted to get out, I think, initially, right? Like when you're in high school or
Yeah.
whatever. When I was looking at schools, when I was getting recruited to play soccer, I wanted to go as far away from Connecticut as possible. And I didn't have any desire to come back to Stanford, to be honest. But, you you kind of go through the different experiences and you see other places and you realize, man, that place is pretty
Good.
special,
Right.
Nice
right?
place.
And it kind of takes growing up here and getting to know the ins and outs and not having like a superficial understanding of it to really value it.
Yeah.
And like even now, as the city has grown, all the stuff that you could do, even as an adult
Yeah.
and adult with a family, like coming to a place like this every morning and seeing people, you know, that live around this neighborhood or who live up where I live. Like it's just there are great places like this where you can interact with different people across the city.
That's awesome. So, you picked up soccer from dad. Can you tell us what you did in high school and where you went to further on playing soccer?
Yeah, sure. So back then it's not like it is now. Now it's pretty like developed in terms of youth soccer, but back then it was like travel and premier, right? Like if you were playing and you were any good, you played premier.
Right.
And then if you were pretty good, you played for what was called the Olympic Development Program, which was every state had a state team for every age group, and you had to make that team, and you'd play all the other states. So it was either your premier team was good and you got out of the state and you played in a regional tournament, or you played for the state team and you played in the regional tournament. You won that, you played in the national tournament.
Right.
So I was really good, and up until like 12, maybe like 12, and like everybody grew, and ultimately I didn't grow all that much.
Right.
But when everybody grows and you don't grow, it was a really challenging time for me. I remember it was the first time I started to get cut from stuff. But as a small guy, you had to develop technically. You had to find ways to improve.
Right.
And even though it was difficult, I saw myself getting better. I didn't play on the best club team, but ultimately, my dad was my first coach for a while. Still the best coach I had. And then I went on to play for a club, and we had a really good coach, and he taught me a lot about playing the position that I played. And it was hard to understand at the time because I felt like he was always yelling at me because I didn't think he thought I was any good. I found out later on, because he was the assistant at UConn when he recruited me, that he was just telling me that if I played a bit more simply and played the way that I should play, that I was very good.
Right.
I didn't understand that as like a 14-year-old. But ultimately, like my body caught up, and by like 16, 17, it was a little late for like recruiting purposes, but I started to play I ended up playing for a different club and going to regionals and playing for the state team, played in the Dallas Cup, which was like a huge it was the largest youth soccer tournament in the world at the time. So that's where I started to get recruited. And again, it was a little late in the process because by that time I was kind of going into senior year, and most of my teammates were getting recruited junior year, right? And again, it's not like it is now, right? While there wasn't much opportunity, there was also an opportunity for late bloomers like me, where like today, I think a lot of those kids get written off. They're not playing for an NYCFC or they're not playing an MLS Next program. For me, there was still a chance.
Right.
And it also helped that at the same time I was playing in men's leagues, like my dad was still playing. My dad was 28 when I was born. So, I mean, he was probably close to my age, right? And he was still playing. He was a keeper. So he was playing. I was playing on men's teams with him
Right.
At nights and like, different cities across Connecticut, which I think ultimately helped my development.
For sure.
Because you're playing with men and you have to learn how to use your body, and tactically it's just a different game, even though it may not be as quick or as fast. But that was helping me. And then, I wasn't a big time recruit. I got recruited to, I had a good showing at a regional tournament, and that's where I started to get recruited by like Syracuse and Bucknell and some other D1 programs. And I was dead set, and I didn't know anything about college soccer. I didn't know who was good. I just kind of went with, my parents didn't know.
Right.
Right. Like I just thought like if the school, I had heard of the school, they must be good at soccer.
Right. Yeah.
So Syracuse I'd heard of. I went on a recruiting trip there. I talked to the coach at the time, and he told me, there was a scholarship available for me. So I was kind of set on going there. I didn't know it until I went to UConn that they actually weren't that good.
Right.
But before I actually went, it sort of situation sort of changed where it was like, well, we don't know if we have the money for you, and you have to play and see, maybe next year.
Right.
And Syracuse is an expensive school.
That's how they get you.
And my dad was set on me going to UConn, partly because it was a state program, his tuition was lower or whatever. And like I said, I wasn't being recruited by them. They had just switched coaches, and a guy who coached Southern Connecticut to like 4 national championships had gotten the head coaching job. So like that happened my senior year. So he took over winter of my senior year of high school, basically cleaned house, and was recruiting a bunch of kids from around the world. a lot of in-state kids because he was working with scholarships that he had. So I wasn't one of the ones he was recruiting until I played a game that he happened to be at. And my old club coach, who was his assistant coach, chased me down after the game and was like, "You got to come to UConn." And I was dead set on not going there because I just wanted to get away from the guy who kept yelling at me all the time. I was like, "This guy's not, why am I going to go to a place this guy doesn't think I'm any good?"
Right.
And so one thing led to another, and I ended up going there, but I ended up redshirting my whole first my first season. But it was a special place, and like once I ended up there, and got to meet my teammates, and be around this coach and his coaching staff and the way they approach the game. It didn't just change my mentality about the game. It just changed you as a person.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, one thing was that our team was much like this community. Like we had guys from South America, the Caribbean, Africa, all over the U.S. And we got along so well. Like I've never been in a room full of such different people where everybody was we were brothers. I mean, there were 28 of us and we still talk. We're still on a group chat. We talk to this day. And then the other thing was like, there was no detail that went unnoticed in that, in that program. Like we trained really hard. I mean, year round. We weren't allowed to leave campus in the summer. Our off seasons were intense. We were so competitive amongst each other, and we were really good. We had a really good team.
Yeah.
And we were playing a style that at that time they weren't really playing in college.
Yeah.
We were really possession oriented. We had wing backs. We were very attacking oriented. And I've done some writing. I used to contribute to Forbes, and I've interviewed some coaches that are still around, and they still remember that team we had because they agreed, like we were just ahead of the time in terms of college soccer because nobody played like that, and nobody trained like that. Nobody, every little detail from like you couldn't walk to practice, you had to run to practice. You couldn't wear earrings or hats around the coaching staff. I mean,
that sounds about right.
It was.
That's legit.
He came from like the Bobby Knight sort of mentality, and maybe it unifies a team against a single person, but we had guys on that team that could have left and gone played at any other program, including myself, and we stayed. And I was a role player and I stayed.
He built that environment.
Ray Reed, yeah.
Ray Reed. So I talked to Miranda. My wife went to UConn, and she knows about that guy. Like it's before her time, but I think his legacy still is around that, all around campus. And I wanted to ask you. So you guys won a national championship, which a lot of people don't know, in 2000. You talk to the work that went into that and how that transitioned into your career.
Sure. I mean, it was from the minute I met him and the coaching staff, the goal was you will win a national championship before you leave here. So that's all. And I believed him. I don't know why I believed him, but I did. And that went into we talked about that every day, whether it was off season, summer, that was the goal. Like if we didn't win, we didn't succeed. And every little thing from film sessions to how we ate as a group, how we treated each other, and how we represented the program. Like it was all about winning a national championship. And he used to tell us along the way, like, you'll remember the national championship, but that's not what's going to stick with you. What's going to stick with you is all the stuff leading up to it. And he was right. And how it's impacted me as a person was, I think I've always been a somewhat ambitious person, but to set goals like that and to tell yourself, to see something in the horizon and be like, okay, we're going to do that. And then make sure that you take every single step along the way to get to, and with that in mind, I think that helped me sort of set me up to do the stuff that I do now. Like when I went into being a lawyer, like I was at a firm just being a lawyer and doing sort of what was expected of me. And I was like, I just couldn't do this. I needed to do something that I could bring sort of an equal level of passion to, which is why I created sort of the practice that I have now. Because I was like, I saw an opportunity there. I was like, I know I could do that if I really, right? There's gonna be a lot of work. I'm gonna have to take some steps back to figure this out. but I can get there. I know I can do it if I put all the stuff into it that needs to go into it, and it worked out. And there's been like maybe one or two other things I've done where I've said I've seen an opportunity and I was like, all right, we could do that.
Yeah.
But if you put on all the effort, right, there's some luck involved, but that it worked out that way. But I think I got that from. I mean, my dad was always ambitious too, and my mom, but from that experience, being like, we're going to win a national championship, and just believing it, and never, like, we believed it. We believed it. I mean, I remember having friends who were top recruits in the country come to our program for like recruiting trips, and then not coming, and then seeing them afterwards and be like, why didn't you come? And they're like, I heard what you guys do in the off season. I'm not doing
They
that.
don't want to do that.
They don't want to put in the work.
It was tough.
Like, so you've met Bob Ford. I don't think you've ever met Bob Ford, but he's very similar to this guy, right? Like, wears the same hat, wears the same clothes, wears the same sneakers, like cigar every single day. But, you know, one thing that he always instilled in all of us was that when you're at the table, hat off. Like, no one has hats on when you're eating, right? Then we always had a prayer before every game, right? So all those things kind of built me into who I am today too. Like, I mean, I don't wear hats frequently, but like, you know, now if we're doing anything where, you know, there's a national anthem or we're eating, we do this anyway. We pray before everything, but there should never be a hat on.
Yeah.
You know, there's just small things that stick with you from sports.
No.
And my dad was very similar too. Like, he wasn't as intense, but he was, you know, very, very much of the mind that you're respectful of your elders. You're at the table. You behave a certain way, right? You work hard. You know, he was of that mentality. I mean,
He used to have the.
Put the belt on.
the
belt was on you.
He doesn't remember those days. He acts like they didn't exist. But
Oh, no, I
but
didn't
it
do
was
that.
but it was hard. You know, how could you say no to him? He was going to school and working and coach. He was never missed it. He was my coach. I don't know how he did it all. Like, I try to figure it out now as an adult. Like, trying to figure out how you do it.
Just
They
like
made it work.
That breed, our folks and older, it's not the same.
Yeah.
They're built different.
So can you go into a little bit about what you do for, like, you're part of the firm, right? I know you directly work with athletes, right? How do you help them along their way?
Okay. So I work with pretty much anyone in the sports and entertainment space. So you could be a company, an investor, talent, whether you're in front of the camera, behind the camera, an athlete, coaches, GMs. It doesn't really matter. The way it was designed was initially I started working with a lot of athletes,
right? Mainly
Mainly because that's where my connections were, right? It kind of stemmed from UConn. A lot of the people that I knew from my program, the other programs, and then people that I went on to that I played against at other schools, and it was kind of the low hanging fruit. Like, I had known that there, especially in the U.S., there's a lot of activity among athletes, right? Not necessarily what they do professionally, but the stuff that they're doing, like, off the court, so to speak, right? And they're not getting good advice. You know, agents are great, but their advice is limited. And so the idea was, okay, let's create a practice that is extremely supportive of what these people are doing as professionals, as people, as personal business people, and give them the best advice they could get, because it just wasn't targeted to them. And that's how it started. And then it sort of transitioned into other talent, like musicians, actors and actresses, producers. And with every profession, there's a layer of, like, complexity. I'm a business lawyer is the easiest way to put it, right? Like, if you run a company, I can help you raise money. I've sold production companies. I've helped people invest hundreds of millions of dollars into sports teams. I've helped people start, like, a touring golf series and put on live events around the world.
Nice.
So it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if there's some business aspect to it, I can help you do that. But the firm as a whole, right? We do a lot with individuals, like everything from trust and estate planning to wills for people, especially clients of mine that are like global superstars who have like a footprint in lots of different countries around the world. There's a lot of like international tax stuff.
Right.
And I don't, I don't know much about tax.
Yeah.
I can point you in the right direction, but usually they come in through me, and we'll kind of support them across all the different things that they do. But they always have, and that was the other thing. I wanted to make sure they weren't being handed off, that they had like a point person that kind of helped them through the process. I mean, and it could be anyone. I mean, reality TV people, help them. They all sorts of issues. We're dealing with one pretty significant one now. It's just, the idea was like to be helpful to these people and help them navigate sort of things that aren't common knowledge. Right. And I liken it to like when I left UConn, I was still trying to play. I knew I wasn't really going to like play in MLS. I was trying, but I was like, yeah, it's probably, and I don't think I had the desire to do that, to kind of go there and be a role player. But I coached actually at West Hill, and I loved it because it was like an opportunity from playing at UConn and playing at the highest college level and seeing the players. And I was like, man, there's some really great players in our town who never got the chance.
Always is.
Right? They didn't have like maybe parents that were as motivated to push them like my parents were, or to get them to practice. That's the easiest part, and that's can be the hardest part. And that was, I was like, let me come back and coach. And I realized that at that time, the team here, my brother was on it. He was a senior. There were some other players there that were super talented, and they just needed they needed exposure. So we actually did really well that season. We went to the state final. We ended up losing, but we were fifth in the country, and they were actually pretty good the season before, because when we won the national championship, Ray Reed, I remember him saying, "Hey, we're gonna recruit your brother." And that there was an Ecuadorian kid, and that little Ecuadorian kid, and we're going to do this again. They didn't end up going to UConn, but there were a lot of good players on that team, and they could have gone, and some of them did go on to do some stuff. And that was the whole thing. I really love that process.
Yeah.
And it's very similar now, right? But then it was just like, hey, you're really good at this. Let me help you get to this next place. And it's the same thing I do now. It's obviously very different circumstance, but it's at the heart of it, it's the same thing.
Right. Yeah, it's so funny that you said that, because like agents, I mean, you've had an agent. I don't know if you had to ever speak or deal with an agent.
Some agents.
But when I was in Milford Academy, when I was at Milford Academy, we had a ton of players who, our coach Chap was just handing his guy, who was an agent, to all the athletes, and it was like, if you had a chance to go D1. He was giving you an agent. And at that time, I had no idea, but I remember he had me come home, and I had to take a train to Orange and meet with this guy. And I had no idea what the heck, I was just signing a contract based off of just signing a contract. I had no idea what it was for or about. He was just like, all right, if you are able to go D1, then that means you have a chance to go to the league. So like, they would lock you in, free anything, just to make money off of you.
That's wild.
And I just thought about that when you said that, because I don't know how old I was. I was
360
18.
deal, huh?
Yeah, I didn't know what, you know what I mean? I gotta find. I'm gonna find his name. I'm gonna find his name, yo, and send it to you guys. But I had absolutely no idea. So like, for you to be able to give, any athlete, we know one, but for you to be able to give any athlete any advice that could help them with taxes, we're dealing with taxes now. We're still trying to figure it out, But with anything, with anything is super helpful.
I mean, there are players that soccer is obviously an easy one for me, because there's a lot of people I know within the league, and I get referrals from executives within the league. But there are players that are been what's the term? Sort of, pros that have bounced around teams, and they're locked up with these big agencies, and they don't understand what they've signed or what they can do or what they can't do, and why, hey, why is my agent not bringing me any kind of marketing deals, things like that. And so I'll help those guys, and sometimes it's just, let's just have a quick call. I'm not going to charge you for this. Let's just talk. And some of those guys end up becoming friends of mine, but it also happens with some guys that go on to be like GMs. I had a GM client who was, he was so reluctant to push on things. And I'm like, you gotta stop being of the mentality to be grateful for this opportunity. You earned it. And so you have to go in knowing that you're looking out for your best interest,
Absolutely.
and that's what I'm there to do. You can't go in and say, I don't, I should be grateful that I'm getting this contract. Like,
Absolutely.
no, because when things aren't working out the way that maybe the club thinks they should be working out, they're not going to come at you with the same gratefulness in mind, right? Like it's a different
It's a business.
They're done with you.
And other times I have guys who are like coaching top college programs. They're like, I'm like, hey, why didn't you come to me for that? I would have helped you. And they're like, well, I'm not ready for you yet. I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
You're making a good amount of money. You're coaching a top program. You need to make sure what you're signing is like the best it could be from your perspective.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
there's just that level to it. But like I said, I work with a lot of upstart musicians who are just getting their careers off the ground.
Yeah.
Younger athletes that are new into their pro careers, and it's good. I like doing it, but it's also good for them to develop good habits.
Absolutely. How is like the NIL
That's
stuff?
what I was gonna ask.
Really?
next, I
So
promise
How
you.
has like the NIL thing changed, like for you? Like, there's kids that are
Making a lot.
big money, right? At like 17 years old, maybe even younger.
Yeah,
Like like do you get a lot of those clients or
I
not
wouldn't
really?
say a lot. I mean, I've gone. So when it started to transition, I got asked by some like college programs to like talk to the athletic departments or put on presentations for the student bodies. So I did a lot of that, and sort of some of it was education based, right? Like, okay, this is what you're going to be confronted with. You may be signing an agent. You may be signing a contract with a brand. These are the things to look out for. Really basic stuff, because a lot of the programs were pulling these like NIL platforms in place, which are helping them build a brand, which is fine, but that's not teaching them how to approach these deals in a way that's going to be beneficial to them. So I did a lot of that at first. That was kind of broadly targeted, and they hired me to come in and speak to the school or the athletic department or help them build a curriculum or whatever. But we've worked with some athletes. I wouldn't say it's been a ton. I was talking to a guy now who's trying to build like a collective for his program within a university. We'll probably help him do that. But I think it's a great opportunity for student athletes. I mean, just being at UConn when we were there, like I felt like there were guys on my team that definitely could have leveraged something, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not going to be big money, but it helps you.
It helps,
right? It helps you while you're there. It could help you as you
After.
transition into like the next stage of your life.
Mhm.
But we'll work on some, and I think it's a tricky landscape for a lot of people, for small schools particularly, because they don't
Right.
have the resources to support their student athletes. But yeah, it's impacted what I do in that it's something that I have to think about, something that I get hired to do, but not all that frequently. I mean, the big deals make sense, right?
Right.
I'll help, and some of the smaller deals, but it's most of this really small stuff is there's not much to it. But it's the bigger deals that need some structuring and some things to think about, where just hiring a big agency to help you put it together isn't going to be what's best for you. And then some of the like the the athletes that are here on visas that aren't like U.S. people,
Yeah.
like structuring stuff for them has been a bit tricky. So
Yeah.
we've been helpful with that too.
Now you talk about big deals. In the football world, got a question. Do you think you can help Reggie Bush get his Heisman back and get the money he received and all that stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if I'm the guy to help him, but I mean, in retrospect, right, it doesn't make sense for him to have lost that now, right? It's there, from my opinion, there should be some form of restitution for guys like that lost really significant, whether it's achievements or trophies or whatever, for stuff that honestly, it made no sense then, and it makes no sense now, right? Like if you think about it from, the way I always looked at it, like think about the Olympic swimmers, right? That wanted to go to college and swim, but were like Olympic superstars and couldn't make any money off of themselves, even though they were global names.
Right.
They lost out on so much,
money, yeah.
right, while they were in college, right? This rights that wrong, but in the same breath, right, you have to think about the guys, men and women that may have lost, like I said, trophies, achievements, if national titles, whatever it is.
Yeah, when we went to USC, it was just like you saw all of the names and it was just like an empty one.
Empty
right there.
space.
Empty space.
That's when it hits.
That's
you, like,
heartbreaking.
you
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I don't think they had any evidence that he received money. Like, it was
Right.
all speculation. It was nothing confirmed. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that doesn't
even
make any
more
sense
wild.
to me.
Yeah, they got it. It's either they give it back or they got to take everybody. Johnny Manziel.
yep.
Everybody
Gotta
Yeah.
go.
He's on tape saying he got money.
Right.
Right.
And
And he
still,
said what he did was worse than anything
Yeah.
Reggie could have done.
Man, that
Yeah.
he might have been probably. It made me want to play running back. He was probably
changed
the
the
game
now.
most
Yeah, he was fun to watch.
electrifying player to ever play the game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, I got a question.
oh,
Go
good. I think that, these college athletes understanding how pivotal of a role they play in the school system, they need to be compensated. My class and my buddies, we talk about that stuff all the time. We made to the first bowl game in about 35 years. So that bowl game alone, I think, brought $1 million to our school, and none of us saw that.
Yep.
So the school reaped the benefits. We didn't really get anything out of it. Obviously, we got our names on the board. Cool, but athletes back then didn't understand compensation with their play. Now the NIL deals, it's played a huge role with, but I feel like it's kind of messed up the coaching with kids. They think, oh, I'm a third street quarterback. Can I get $1 million?
Yeah.
Like what is your thought process? What you tell athletes to expect? If you speak to a football player or a soccer player, that they're not a starter, they're not big time, like, don't go in thinking that way. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've never had that conversation in general. The conversation I do have is you got to figure out what your market value is,
Mhm.
right? Like outside of, leveraging your place within a program in the community, right? Not just in the community within the university, but like if I had come back from UConn here and come back to Stanford and put on my own clinics, right? I could do that stuff now
Mhm.
Right.
and get paid for it,
Yeah.
right? Using the fact that I'm a UConn soccer player and we're a top program, which we were at the time, and putting on my own clinics and making money. So you have to think about, right? Because that's life. When you leave college, you're going to try to figure out how to make money one way or the other, right? Whether a full-time job or a side job or whatever. So having that frame of mind when you're at school and now that you have these opportunities is something you should be thinking about doing. I know it's become increasingly challenging for coaches because I do talk to them about how to bring money into the program so they can use it for recruiting purposes, how to build collectives, how to work with the university. That is really, especially with the transfer portal. I think it's a really difficult place to be if you're a coach, but it does give you opportunities to be creative. Like your point about the bowl game right now with like collective group licensing and things like that you can use that opportunity to raise money, right? Marketing dollars for your program because it's not just one individual player, but your whole team on some some marketing opportunities for a local business or whatever. But that's ways to bring money in that you can share, not just the program. So I think there are ways to attack that. It's a little hard to tell somebody as an individual, right? Here's what to expect. It's what are you going to do for yourself to create the opportunity?
I got a question for you, but I want to make a statement to the camera. To all the athletes we train that you are now in the college, you're playing at these big D1 schools, playing lacrosse, you're playing football, you're playing
Soccer,
whatever.
tennis.
Start building your brand. Some of these kids are too cool for school. They're not even thinking about it. Or they're like, oh, that's corny. I don't want to do that. Build your brand, play your sport, show what you're doing, how you practice the things on and off the field. When you're done with school, you can go back to your hometown. You can go anywhere.
You can start an LLC
and you can
with that.
start something and you can make money based on what you love to do. So if you're a top lacrosse player, start now, go home, start clinics, start coaching, teaching people, get paid for it. Don't be a fool. Use it. Okay.
Now continue.
Because I try to tell these kids,
And they think it's
and
a joke.
and then they're done with school, and they don't. Oh, what's next?
What's next?
You
Yeah.
could have been doing it.
Yeah, you have to seize the opportunity. You have to be creative, right? Like you can't do what everyone else is doing. You got to find your own path.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Those 4 years while you're playing, you could really now you have the opportunity to do something. Like you said, if you put the time into your craft, and then you find, obviously you have school and stuff, but if you find something creative to do off the field,
Yeah.
there are
Gotta utilize
opportunities.
it.
Have to.
And my question, so you former athlete, you're now a father, you have 2 kids, you're married. How
Two
important?
children, Des.
2 children, Ross. Okay. How important is it for you to get to fitness, keep fitness in your life and continuing on with your wife as well, and you know, showing your kids what your dad showed you?
It's really important. I mean, to start, I mean, I never stopped. Like for some reason, after college, I just never stopped training. I just I actually my last semester I spent in Spain, and I would go to the track and do like what I knew our team was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I did that. I think I thought maybe I was going to come back and play, which I did. But I would go do it, and the people in my study abroad program thought I was nuts.
You're looking at
I found a
crazy.
track, and I was sprinting, and I found a gym. But it's always been something I've done. I mean, when I started this career, I mean, I'm in a lot of meetings, but I'm sitting a lot. So I know I'm the kind of person that if I don't do something every day, by the end of the day, middle of the day, I'm gonna get restless, and I can't,
You
right?
know
Like I have
yourself.
too much.
Yep.
I have too much to do, right? I have my clients to take care of. I have to. When you're not busy, you got to find new clients. You got people that work for you that you're responsible for, right? You got a family. So I need to be able to put in a good day every day. And for me, that starts with getting up and doing something active, and kind of that sets up my day. And you guys know who have kids, like there's not a lot of alone time. So the mornings when I'm either here or I'm at home doing something, that's my time, right? Because the rest of the day is you're giving yourself to all these other responsibilities. And even at night, like for me, I come back, I'm around for dinner, put the kids to bed, and a lot of the time I have to hop back and online and do some more work. It's just that's my job, right? But it's also important for me, for my kids to see how active I am and how active Heather is, because they know. I mean, I think they see it as, oh, they're doing that so that they can play with us,
Yeah.
right? Because like our weekends, we're outside, we're constantly moving and doing stuff, and you want to be able to do that for them. My older son they both love coming to my games when I play, and for me that was important for them to do that with me because I enjoyed so much of it with my dad. So it has continued to play such an important part in who I am, but now it's still part of me, but it makes everything else I do on a daily basis that much easier.
Yep.
So now you talked about having your kids come to your games and watch you play. How do you balance running a business, being a dad, a husband?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's a tricky balance, right? Like I do try to do it all. Like I wanted to coach, and I started coaching my son's travel soccer team. When I was asked to do it, I didn't know if I could do it. Like I talked to Heather about it. I was like, I really want to do this, but my job is heavy, and I'm not just in the city a couple of days a week, but sometimes I have to travel. I work late, right? Because if you're not, for me, like clients don't just come to you. You have to
You
have to
gotta
get
go
out there and meet people and get them. I'm not selling any products. I'm selling myself, and
Absolutely.
they have to get to know me, and so that takes time. But I knew if I didn't do it, and Heather made me realize this, that if I didn't do it, I'd regret it. And there's only going to be so much time that I will be able to be his coach. If he may not love the game,
Right.
and that's fine, and he may stop playing, or he may really love it, and he may go on and need someone who's more dedicated and full time than I would be. So that became important. But it's a difficult balance, but you try to find time for it all, right? You figure it out. That's why I get up early, right? Because otherwise I wouldn't get the fitness part in. I get to work as early as I can. I make sure I get home, right, for dinner, so I'm around. Because I don't travel if I don't need to, right? There's a lot of stuff that, particularly in my line of work, people will do because it may be good to show your face, but for me, if it's not super valuable, I'm not going.
Right.
I don't need to do that.
Put in your family first.
Yeah, they're by far they come first, and then like I said, if I have to work late after that, then I'll work late. That's fine. But yeah, no, family's first. You try to take care of yourself, and obviously the business needs to be top of mind too, because that's what helps feed the family, but also I enjoy it, and it's my passion project, right? Like if I don't do it, nobody else is holding it up. So somebody's got to do it.
It's dope, man.
Mike, I think it's that time. You
That
got
time.
questions?
Okay.
Rapid fire. Hope you're
We
ready.
need answers.
right.
All right. You're a soccer dude, so we got to ask you, Messi or Ronaldo? Who you picking?
Messi.
And
That's
why?
easy. That's easy.
I mean, he's out of this world. I mean, Ronaldo is incredible. He's athletic, and not to take anything away from him, but Messi just even till this day, he does things people have never seen anyone else do, things that don't make sense, right? And you ask some of the top defenders in the world, right? He's not the most athletically gifted person, but he's been the most difficult person for them to ever mark.
Yep.
He doesn't need to move a lot now when he doesn't have the ball, but the minute, he's always in the right place. He's leading people into spaces, where they should be. He's just there's never been anyone like him, and I don't know if we'll see anyone like him soon.
I was watching something with him and Ronaldinho, and I think he mentioned that he gets a lot of his like passion and his skill from him. I gotta send you guys that clip, but like
Ronaldinho's a man.
Dino
Loved
was,
him too.
he was disgusting.
He was-
I mean,
Man.
like great facilitator, and like you kind of see how Messi is watching him, and now his game kind of revolves around that, right? Where he's like putting everyone in great situations to be able to score and stuff like that.
I
So
loved Ronaldinho.
Second question. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old one piece of advice, what would that be?
Have more confidence. I think I lacked a little confidence when I was at UConn. I knew what my strengths were. I wasn't like a flashy player. I wasn't a goal scorer, but I was a really good holding midfielder. I was a good distributor. I had good vision and a good mind for the game. I think, I was surrounded by some amazing players, and I wish I just had a little bit. I've been a little more reluctant to be kind of sort of pigeonholed into something, but at the same time, right? Like you take that experience and you're like, I'm never gonna let that happen again, right? Because then the next thing you do, it's like when I had my first law firm job, I'm like, I'm not staying here. I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna settle for this. This
Right.
isn't it. So I would say have more confidence, but I think I learned that along the way. But I would love to have seen what else I could have achieved if I had just a bit more confidence.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's one common myth about your job people don't know?
I think they've either seen too much Suits or Ballers, and they think one or the other. They think my
Ballers
life
will
is that.
do it to you,
Yeah, it's like, it's not, it sounds glamorous, but it's not, right? Like it sounds like we're going to parties, and it's not what we do. It's, it even at like the stuff that I do that is the most fun, it's, very much behind the scenes, and you deal with some great people, but you're not at the signing. You're
Right.
not at
It's all
you
behind
know,
the scenes.
yeah. I had the opportunity to work for Jurgen Klopp, the coach at Liverpool, and I was a Liverpool fan, and I remember getting the call that he had hired us, and it was he had hired my partner, and then by default I had hired me because Fenway Sports owns Liverpool. And so I was representing this coach it was like a Saturday morning, and I was watching Liverpool play somebody, knowing that the coach on the field was not going to be the coach very much longer. So that was pretty cool. But as cool as that sounds, I was essentially either sitting in my office or my living room, and on phone calls negotiating a contract. Not like I wasn't in the thing where he signed. I wasn't
Right.
holding up a shirt. It was
Right.
none of that cool stuff.
It's not the
It
cool
was
stuff.
all behind
yeah.
the scenes.
That's dope, though. What's the most important lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
That details matter. Like I said, at my first job, I didn't love it. And at the time, as you go through it, you're like, why am I learning this stuff? Like, why am I doing this stuff? Doesn't matter, right? And then as you progress, you realize that all that little stuff, all the late nights, really late nights, learning things that you thought were going to be useless, weren't useless in the end. That's the stuff that, to me, like I look back and I'm like, oh, I can pull from that, or I'm glad I learned that at the time. All those little things play a big part when it counts, and it's it's like it's the same thing at UConn. We focused on all the little things, and all those little things, whether it was like how we played and how we passed and where we ran off the ball and how we trained. that stuff, it was invaluable in the end, right? That's what set us apart. And now in what I do, it's all the little stuff, all the people that work for me, you know, I make sure they get exposed to all the little stuff because that's the stuff that's going to make you a better lawyer and ultimately better help to the person that you're working for.
So that leads to the next question. People that you have under you, if you're interviewing, what are you looking for in a person if you want someone to work with you?
Someone that has shown that they have like work ethic, right? Like that they've been places and they've worked really hard. They demonstrate that there was a purpose for being there, right? That when they come to me and they're interviewing for me, that they're not sort of, again, blinded by the title and what they think it means. I really want to know why somebody wants to work here and work with me. I don't care about like colleges, law firms have prestige, right? I don't care about that stuff. And I tell people all the time, I don't care about law firm names and how prestigious they are. I could care less. What I care about is that we do a good job for the people that we work for, and that we, you know, that is exemplified by everybody on our team. So I look for people who really want to be there for the right reasons, that seem to be people that can work well with other people, because my clients aren't like I said, they aren't like super sophisticated business people all the time. They've never done some of the stuff that we're doing for them, and they don't understand why it costs so much, right? So you have to be able to talk to people from all backgrounds. You have to be able to understand their concerns, their goals, their objectives, and be able to translate what we're doing and why it's valuable. Because if you can't have that kind of conversation, then they're not going to understand what we're doing, and they're going to get stuck with a really big bill at the end. They're going to never come back. So you have to kind of be able to develop that personal relationship and that understanding with people. So when I have a conversation with someone, I want to make sure that I have a good conversation with them on a professional level, but also at a personal level, because ultimately I do care about them as a person. Like I don't want them to come to work for me because that's what they're doing. I want them to come to work for me and develop. So either they are like my practice grows and they become leaders within it, or they go do something else. Because the first place I worked for, I just felt like I was slotted in there to work for some time, and then the next person would come. And that to me, I don't care what you do, you never want to feel like that.
That's real. I feel like we can relate with that big time.
Relate with that.
What's your biggest fear?
I think failing at anything, whether it's like not being the best at, or not getting the most out of any of the relationships I have, my wife, and even work. You want to, what's that saying? You want to get the most mileage out of your talent. Like I want to make sure I get the most mileage out of my talent, whether it's at home or in the office, right? Like I know I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to, I built this practice out of nothing, and I want to make sure we get it right, and we're as successful as we can be, and that only comes with working at it, and that's what we're doing. So if I look back and go, I could have done more there, or I didn't take that opportunity because I was lazy or whatever, that's the stuff that really bothers me when I look back and I missed opportunities or failures because of lack of effort or just awareness.
Last question. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
Someone who contributed, right? Like whether it's at work, at home, and someone who contributed and cared, right? The community, right? I want to make sure that I'm not just here, right? I'm somebody who's giving back, right? Making places better, my firm better, my family better, right? Your community here when we're working out together, this community, because it matters. I had a friend, it was like a cousin to me. I don't know if you ever knew who he was. His name was Keith Segovia. He was an incredible soccer player. Played at Stanford High. Went to Southern, won national championship, was a pro. And in his late 20s, he got colon cancer, and he fought for 4 years. Like, I've never seen anybody fight for anything. And ultimately, he lost that battle. And he was such a big part of the community here as not just a soccer player, as a coach, He coached with his brother Jason runs the boys travel program here. And we started a charity, myself, his brother, his mom, his dad, in his name because he was such a big part of this community, especially the soccer community. And he cared so much about it, and he cared about the kids that were coming under him, the kids he coached, and giving them opportunities. So we started a charity to help give players who came from like tough socioeconomic backgrounds opportunities to go train at top places if that's what was in their future, and for other cancer patients who needed money just to either do something for that would help them feel a little bit better for a moment or to make them more comfortable at home. Right. And the whole idea was like, you know, in the same vein, right? Like Keith isn't here that we as a community are in his name are trying to do something to give back. Absolutely. And to me, that's always been important, right? Helping the kids that I like, even coaching the kids now on my son's team to try to give them the opportunity to play somewhere else if they're good, right? Like it's not about being a pro, or it's about like how can you use soccer to like access different opportunities for yourself, especially coming out of this community where those opportunities are incredibly important and hard to come by.
Absolutely. Wow.
We appreciate you joining us.
Hold on, I got one more question.
You got something more?
I got one more question for him.
I might have something too after.
I got one more question for him. Who's winning in soccer? You or Dave Rueda?
I'm going to say me all the time. I mean, he is.
Who was better?
I'm going to say me all the time. I think I was a more versatile player than he was.
Nephew in there.
And we still play.
Come on, don't do that.
We still play. We play on the same men's team now, and he's a stats guy. He's like, oh, you see, I got 3 goals. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't play any defense. You hung up by the goal. You didn't pass the ball.
Right.
You know, I'm here doing. I'm the oldest guy on the team. I'm doing all the dirty work.
Right.
Giving you opportunities, and you put 3 of 7 behind in the goal. Okay,
yeah, it's not a good.
But that's all you remember is the
right.
Yeah, that's all.
That's not a good percentage, dog.
3 of 7 ain't good.
I got one more before we let you go. You had a sore shoulder.
I knew this was coming.
You had a sore shoulder. We're gonna get to the bottom of this.
We need to figure it out.
We're all in one place now.
Yeah, we need to figure this out.
So I was training your wife, and she said, "Yeah, Mike, the shoulder hurt. Like Ross had him doing like a little bit extra weight, and put him out for a couple days." I said, "Oh, tell me more about this. 'Cause we need to figure this out.
We need to know. We need to get the bottom of this.
Because we got a system here at XenHouse. If a trainer does something where it's clicking or something isn't something sore,
feel a little off.
We're gonna get to the root of the problem. We're talking to the trainer.
There's a tally mark,
and we keeping tally. So Ross hurt you. Can you please explain that? He hurt your shoulder.
I'm gonna say that I think I slept on it wrong because I feel like I'm gonna get singled out. My rate is gonna go up here.
Ross definitely bribed them.
Yeah. There's
no bribing behind the scene transaction.
Yeah.
But just I
will say I appreciate how hard he pushes me, because that's why you come to a place like this, right? Like you guys push everyone, and that's what you need. Otherwise, the basement at home workouts get a little soft after a while.
One last thing, we're gonna get Heather back on the soccer field to really play.
I keep telling her she should. She's had more knee surgery. I mean, she's had 3.
She's good
3
now.
ACL.
She moves around. She's fine.
I don't know. I want her to get out there because I think A, she really enjoys it. B, I think the kids would love to see her play. Right? They don't know her for that. They know she played, but I don't think they know how much she really played and how much she likes it. So, she should get out there.
Yeah,
we've talked about every time she comes in.
Yeah, she tells me that. That's good. She needs somebody else in her ear.
Yeah,
but she's a little nervous about the knee injuries.
Yeah, she got to do more agility though. How did she hurt the knee?
She tore ACL 3 times. I mean, one was as a kid. I think one was probably later in high school, and then one was after college. But I think she's just. And then she tried to play a few years ago, and then I think it was like she did something else to it, and it was like nagging her. But it wasn't as. Thankfully, it wasn't as bad. But so she's a little nervous, but I'm sure she'd love to play. Like she loves coming here and doing the workouts with you guys.
She has been coming more.
She's consistent.
Yeah. She was a little nervous when we had the outdoor stuff on the field. Like she was like, "Man, I don't want to go to Ross Station." But now, like you're starting to see her like
Yeah,
a
no,
little bit more out there. You know what I'm saying?
It's good
Yeah,
for her.
Heather is funny because I had her one-on-one one day. So
Hates
she's
that.
the only one in the
Yeah.
class.
Hated that.
She hates one-on-one. So I would give her exercise and I'll be like, I'm gonna go over there, do your thing. Just trying to give her a different feel, but
Yeah.
I know she don't like a lot, like all eyes on her.
All eyes on her.
Yeah.
No.
So that was
no.
funny.
That's funny because our wedding, you know, you have your wedding dance. I don't know if I want to do that. And so what we ended up doing is, you know, my
Are you
family.
kidding me?
Yeah, my
Everybody's
family was,
watching.
you know, my
Yo.
family is Hispanic, so we would dance a lot of Spanish music, and I was like, all right, I got an idea. So we had a song that started very slow, and it was like we weren't even dancing for like 2 minutes, I think. And then it gets fast, and I told my family, right, when it gets fast, everybody
Get in there.
Jump in
everybody
there.
get in
Yeah.
there. And it was great because that was just set the tone for the
That's
party.
good.
But
Yeah.
that's one way to like
You balance her
pressure
out.
off.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
balance her out.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's any relationship though. You know what I mean? Like you guys got a good balance going.
Yeah, you got to try.
So
That's
Mike,
dope.
if you want to give your social media tag, just look in the camera, let them know where people can find you or your website.
Shoot, I don't even know what they are, man. That's how good I am. I'll can I follow up on that one?
Well, you
can
could just
say
do
something
the,
and we'll
you could
find
just do
it
your
at it.
website. I think you could just do your
All
website.
right,
You don't have to do
you
IG.
can find me at withersworldwide.com. Michael Rueda. I'm the head of sports entertainment there.
Pull
Boom.
up.
That's
Nice
good.
and simple.
Reach
Right
out.
to it.
Yeah.
Get it done. Get
Thank
your
you-
money
Thanks,
Thank
worth.
you for
guys.
coming. We
This is
Thanks
appreciate
for
your
having
time.
us.
Yeah, thank
Oh,
you,
it's
big
good.
dog.
I like
We
what you guys are
signing
doing.
out. Episode 63. Paid.
Paid.
XenHouse, yeah. XenHouse, yeah.